She has sung in front of millions. She has prayed with presidents. She has survived heartbreak that would have broken most people. But at 87 years old, after nearly 7 decades of bringing hope to the world through her voice, Pastor Shirley Caesar made an announcement that shocked everyone. She wasn't just stepping back from the spotlight. She was saying goodbye. And the reason why reveals something profound about faith, sacrifice, and what it really means to leave a legacy. Shirley Caesar wasn't supposed to become famous. She was born in 1938 in Durham, North Carolina, the youngest of 13 children in a pastor's family. Her father, Bishop David Caesar, was a respected minister, but he was strict. Very strict. He believed that entertainment and faith didn't mix. Singing in church was one thing. But performing? That was worldly. That was dangerous. Yet something inside young Shirley refused to stay quiet. By the time she was a teenager, her voice had already become legendary in church circles. It wasn't just beautiful. It was powerful. It made people feel things they couldn't explain. When she sang, walls seemed to shake. People wept. They found strength they didn't know they had. But her father still disapproved. He thought his daughter was wasting her gift on vanity. She didn't listen. In the 1960s, Shirley joined the Caravans, one of the most famous gospel groups in American history. The group was revolutionary. They weren't timid about their faith. They performed with energy, passion, and authenticity that had never been seen before in gospel music. Shirley's voice became the centerpiece. Her solos were unforgettable. She would hold notes that seemed impossible to hold. She would bend and shape her voice in ways that made people believe she was channeling something divine. And maybe she was. Over the next 60 years, Shirley Caesar became more than just a singer. She became a spiritual force. She released over 40 albums. She won multiple Grammy Awards. She performed at the Democratic National Convention. She sang at inaugurations. Presidents knew her name. But more importantly, millions of ordinary people knew her name. People who had suffered. People who had lost hope. People who found in her music a reason to believe again. But what made Shirley truly legendary wasn't just her voice. It was her refusal to compromise. While other gospel artists crossed over into secular music, Shirley stayed true to her calling. She could have been wealthier. She could have been more famous in mainstream circles. Instead, she chose to serve her community. She built a church. She fed the hungry. She counseled the broken. She lived what she sang about. That's rare. That's powerful. That's the kind of integrity that commands respect. Yet even at the height of her influence, even surrounded by love and admiration, something was changing inside her body. Something she couldn't stop. Something that would force her to make the most difficult decision of her life. But nobody saw it coming. To understand why Shirley Caesar's announcement was so shocking, you have to understand who she really was. She wasn't just a performer who showed up to sing and then disappeared. She was present. She was involved. She was everywhere her people needed her to be. In 1982, at the height of her singing career, Shirley made a decision that surprised everyone. She became an ordained evangelist. Then, in 2001, she founded Mount Calvary Holy Church in Raleigh, North Carolina. She didn't do this for money. The church was in a neighborhood that needed spiritual guidance. She did it because she believed God had called her to serve. And she served relentlessly. For more than 2 decades, Shirley would balance her touring schedule with her responsibilities as a pastor. She would fly across the country performing sold-out concerts, then come home to counsel members of her congregation who were struggling with addiction, poverty, and despair. She would sit with people in their darkest moments and remind them that God hadn't abandoned them. She would pray with them. She would listen to them. She would show up. People noticed. People remembered. But Shirley's life hadn't always been easy. She had experienced profound loss. In 2012, her daughter Dominique died from a blood clot. The grief was devastating. Shirley had dedicated so much of her life to helping others, and yet she couldn't save her own child. Many people would have become bitter. Many would have questioned their faith. But Shirley did something different. She channeled her pain into purpose. She became even more committed to her ministry. She understood suffering on a deeper level now. She could sit with grieving families not as an outsider offering platitudes, but as someone who truly understood what it meant to lose everything. This was her strength. Even as she aged, Shirley never slowed down. Into her 80s, she was still performing. She was still pastoring. She was still showing up. She would sing with the same passion she had shown 50 years earlier. Her voice might have changed slightly with age, but the power behind it remained undeniable. When Shirley Caesar sang, something transcendent happened. Time seemed to stop. The ordinary world fell away. What remained was pure spirit, pure faith, pure love. People who attended her services didn't come just for entertainment. They came for healing. They came for hope. They came because they believed that in Shirley's presence, they might touch something eternal. Yet even the strongest voices can grow tired. Even the most devoted hearts can reach their limit. And that's when the pain began. In 2024, at 86 years old, Shirley Caesar began experiencing something she had never experienced before. Pain. Not the spiritual kind that could be healed through prayer. Physical pain. The kind that doesn't go away when you close your eyes and believe hard enough. At first, she tried to push through it. That's what she had always done. When life got hard, you didn't complain. You didn't give up. You kept moving forward. You trusted God. But this was different. The pain was getting worse. It was affecting her ability to do the things she loved most. Her voice, which had been her greatest gift for nearly 7 decades, was becoming harder to control. She went to her doctors. The diagnosis came back: stage 4 cancer. The word cancer carries weight that most people can't fully understand until they hear it directed at someone they love. It's not just a medical diagnosis. It's a sentence. It's a clock that starts ticking in a way you can't unhear. Stage 4 means the cancer has spread. It means time is limited. It means the body you've lived in your whole life is now working against you. Shirley Caesar had spent her entire adult life telling people that God never gives you more than you can handle. She had sung about faith in the face of impossible circumstances. She had preached about trust when everything falls apart. She had counseled thousands of people through their own health crises, their own diagnoses, their own moments of terror in the dark. Now it was her turn. But here's what made Shirley different from most people. She didn't hide. She didn't retreat into privacy and suffer in silence. Instead, she made a choice that shocked her family and her congregation. She decided to speak publicly about her diagnosis. She decided to be honest about what was happening. She decided to use this final chapter of her life the same way she had used every other chapter, in service to others. In her announcement, Shirley was clear but not bitter. She was honest but not hopeless. She said that she had lived a full life. She said that she had no regrets. She said that she was ready for whatever came next. But she also said something that revealed the depth of her character. She said she wanted to spend her remaining time with the people she loved most. Her family. Her church. Her God. She wasn't asking for pity. She was asking for presence. And in that request, she taught a final lesson about what matters when everything else falls away. Yet her announcement contained something even more profound. Most people diagnosed with terminal illness retreat. They become private. They surround themselves only with family. They focus inward. That's understandable. That's human. But Shirley Caesar had never been most people. When she made her diagnosis public, she did it deliberately. She did it prayerfully. She did it with a specific purpose in mind. She wanted to model something for the world. She wanted to show people how to face death with dignity. How to face it with faith. How to face it without denying the reality of what's happening. In interviews, Shirley spoke with remarkable clarity about her condition. She didn't pretend she wasn't scared. She didn't pretend the pain wasn't real. But she also didn't surrender to despair. She talked about her legacy. She talked about the music she had created. She talked about the lives she had touched. She talked about her faith in a way that felt earned, not performed. This wasn't a woman reciting memorized verses. This was a woman who had spent 87 years building a relationship with God, and now that relationship was being tested in the most profound way possible. People responded in ways that surprised even Shirley. Across social media, across churches, across the country, people began sharing stories. They talked about concerts they had attended where Shirley's voice had saved their lives. Not metaphorically. Literally saved them. People who were considering suicide found hope in her music. People who had lost faith found it again through her example. People who felt abandoned by God felt God's presence through Shirley's voice. And she read these stories. She saw these messages. And she understood that her life, even now, was still serving a purpose. There's a concept in spiritual traditions called sacred witness. It means being present to suffering without trying to fix it or escape it. Shirley Caesar became a sacred witness to her own dying. She allowed people to see what faith looks like when it's tested. She allowed people to see that you can be terrified and still be brave. You can be sad and still be grateful. You can be facing the end and still be full of love. This was revolutionary in a culture that prefers to hide death, to sanitize it, to pretend it isn't coming for all of us. Shirley refused that comfort. She chose transparency. She chose vulnerability. She chose to use her remaining time to teach one final, crucial lesson, that how you face your end matters just as much as how you lived your life. Maybe more. Her decision to speak publicly wasn't about seeking attention or sympathy. It was about leaving a roadmap. It was about saying to millions of people, you don't have to be afraid. You don't have to face this alone. But what she said next revealed the true measure of her heart. In her final public appearances and statements, Shirley Caesar focused on one thing above all else: gratitude. Not the superficial kind. Not the kind you say because it's polite. But deep, authentic, hard-won gratitude for a life that had been fuller than she ever imagined possible. She talked about her mother, who had raised 13 children on very little. She talked about her father, who had initially disapproved of her singing but eventually became her greatest supporter. She talked about the Caravans, the group that had believed in her when she was just a young woman with a big voice and bigger dreams. She talked about her congregation, the people who had allowed her to pastor them, to pray with them, to be part of their most sacred moments. But more than anything, she talked about purpose. Shirley believed that every life has a purpose. Every single one. She believed that God doesn't make mistakes. She believed that even the hard parts, even the suffering, even the cancer diagnosis at 87, was part of a larger story. Not in a way that diminishes the pain, but in a way that gives it meaning. She spoke about the young singers she had mentored over the years. She spoke about the students she had encouraged to pursue gospel music. She spoke about the doors she had opened for African American women in a genre that hadn't always welcomed them. She spoke about breaking barriers that people didn't even realize existed until she walked through them. And then she said something that made people weep. She said that her greatest accomplishment wasn't her Grammy Awards. It wasn't the sold-out concerts or the standing ovations or the presidents she had performed for. Her greatest accomplishment was the relationships she had built. The lives she had touched. The faith she had helped restore in people who thought they had lost it forever. She said that if even one person watching her story felt less alone, felt more hopeful, felt closer to God because of her music and her example, then her life had meant something. Then it had all been worth it. This wasn't false modesty. This was clarity. This was a woman who had spent 87 years on this earth and knew exactly what mattered and what didn't. Money didn't matter. Fame didn't matter. Awards didn't matter. What mattered was love. Connection. Service. Legacy. Her message was simple but revolutionary in its simplicity. You don't need to wait until you're dying to live this way. You don't need a terminal diagnosis to understand what's truly important. You can choose right now to build a life based on what actually matters. You can choose right now to love deeply. To serve faithfully. To live purposefully. Shirley Caesar was teaching us, even in her final season, how to really live. But her influence extended far beyond what most people realized. When you trace the history of gospel music in America, you can't tell the story without Shirley Caesar. She didn't just sing gospel. She transformed it. She elevated it. She proved that gospel music could be artistic, powerful, and spiritually authentic all at the same time. Before Shirley, gospel was often seen as something separate from real music. It was relegated to churches and religious spaces. Shirley Caesar walked onto concert stages and television programs and declared that gospel was art. It was entertainment. It was worthy of the same respect and attention as any other form of music. And she backed that up with her voice, her artistry, and her uncompromising integrity. Young singers watched her. Black women especially watched her. They saw a woman who refused to compromise her values for commercial success. They saw a woman who could command a stage with as much authority as any secular performer. They saw that you could be faithful and famous. You could be spiritual and successful. You didn't have to choose between your values and your dreams. This changed everything. In the decades after Shirley's rise, the landscape of gospel music transformed. More women became recording artists. More gospel singers crossed over into mainstream recognition. More churches embraced music that was energetic and contemporary while remaining deeply rooted in faith. Shirley Caesar didn't do this alone, but she paved the way. She showed what was possible. Beyond music, her legacy extends into her community work. Mount Calvary Holy Church, the congregation she founded, continues to serve people in need. Her example of faith combined with action inspired countless others to do the same. She showed that being a person of faith means rolling up your sleeves and doing the work. It means feeding hungry people. It means counseling the broken. It means being present. Her family will carry forward her name and her values. Her music will continue to touch new generations. In an age of streaming, young people who were born long after Shirley's peak will discover her voice and wonder how they never knew about her before. They'll listen to her sing and understand something true about the human spirit. They'll feel what millions felt before them, that this woman's voice carries something holy. But perhaps her greatest legacy is the way she faced her final